Hello and welcome to my channel. Here I tell interesting stories. Don't forget to subscribe.
The wind moved gently through the tall grass of Thrace, whispering like a secret that only the earth understood. In that quiet land of rolling hills and silver rivers, a child was born under a sky that seemed to glow with unusual softness. His name was Orpheus. From the moment he opened his eyes, something about him felt different. His mother, Calliope, one of the Muses, daughters of Zeus and goddesses of art and inspiration, held him close and sensed it immediately. This was no ordinary child. Music lived inside him before he even learned to speak. His father, according to some, was Apollo, the god of music and light himself. Whether that was truth or legend, no one could say for certain. But what no one doubted was this: Orpheus carried a gift the world had never seen before. As a child, he was quiet, not weak, just deeply attentive. While other children ran, shouted, and fought with sticks pretending to be warriors, Orpheus would sit beside rivers, listening. He listened to everything: the flow of water, the hum of insects, the rustle of leaves. To him, these were not random sounds. They were pieces of something greater, like scattered notes waiting to be gathered into a song. One day, when he was still very young, Apollo himself appeared before him. The god stood tall, radiant, holding a golden lyre that shimmered in the sunlight. "This belongs to you," Apollo said, placing the instrument in Orpheus's hands. The boy hesitated. "I don't know how to play." Apollo smiled slightly. "You already do." And so Orpheus touched the strings. The first sound that came out was soft, uncertain, but it carried a strange power. The air seemed to pause. The wind slowed. Even the birds stopped mid-song, as if they were listening. Orpheus played again. This time, the melody flowed. It wasn't learned. It wasn't practiced. It simply existed, like it had always been there, waiting for him. Days turned into years, and Orpheus grew. His music grew with him, becoming deeper, richer, more powerful. People began to speak about him in whispers at first, then openly. A boy whose music can calm storms. A young man whose songs make wild animals lie down peacefully. A musician who can make trees lean closer just to hear him play. These were not exaggerations, they were truths. Travelers came from distant lands to hear him. Kings invited him into their halls. Warriors hardened by battle found tears in their eyes when his fingers moved across the strings. But Orpheus himself did not seek fame. He played because he had to. Music was not something he created. It was something that moved through him. And yet, despite all his gifts, there was something missing in his life. He did not know it yet. Not until the day he met her. Her name was Eurydice. It happened on a warm afternoon when the sun bathed the forest in golden light. Orpheus had wandered far from the villages, deeper into a place where the trees grew thick and ancient. He sat beneath a large oak tree and began to play. The melody was gentle, almost shy, like a question without words. As the sound drifted through the forest, it reached someone: Eurydice. She had been walking through the woods, gathering flowers, her mind lost in quiet thoughts. When she heard the music, she stopped. It was unlike anything she had ever heard. It wasn't just beautiful, it felt alive. The melody seemed to speak directly to her heart, as if it knew her, as if it understood things about her that she had never spoken aloud. Without realizing it, she began to follow the sound. Step by step, she moved deeper into the forest until she found him. Orpheus. He sat with his eyes half closed, completely lost in the music. He didn't notice her at first. To him, there was only the song. But Eurydice saw him clearly, and something shifted inside her. It wasn't sudden like lightning. It was quiet, like the first moment of dawn. She stood there listening, afraid to interrupt, afraid that if she moved or spoke, the moment would disappear. Eventually, Orpheus opened his eyes, and he saw her. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. The music faded into silence, but the feeling it had created remained, stronger than before. "I'm sorry," Eurydice said softly. "I didn't mean to interrupt." "You didn't," Orpheus replied. His voice was calm, but something in it had changed. "What was that song?" she asked. He looked down at the lyre, as if considering the question for the first time. "I don't know," he admitted. "It just happens." Eurydice smiled. "I think it was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." Orpheus felt something unfamiliar in his chest. Not the calm he felt when he played, not the focus. Something warmer, stronger. "What is your name?" he asked. "Eurydice." He repeated it quietly, as if testing how it sounded. "Eurydice." And just like that, something began. They met again the next day, and the day after. At first, they spoke little. Words felt unnecessary. Orpheus would play, and Eurydice would listen. Sometimes she would laugh. Sometimes she would close her eyes. Sometimes she would simply sit in silence beside him. But slowly, they began to talk about small things, about the forest, about the stars, about dreams they barely understood. Eurydice had a way of seeing the world that fascinated Orpheus. She noticed details others ignored. She spoke of simple things as if they carried hidden meaning. And Orpheus, for the first time in his life, felt understood not because of his music, but because of who he was. As for Eurydice, she saw beyond his gift. To her, he was not a legend or a miracle. He was just Orpheus, and that mattered more than anything. Seasons changed. The warmth of summer gave way to the golden tones of autumn, and then to the quiet stillness of winter. Through it all, they remained together. Their love grew naturally, without force, like roots spreading beneath the earth. Eventually, the world around them began to notice. "Orpheus is in love," people said, "and she must be special to capture the heart of someone like him." They were right. She was, and he knew it. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in deep shades of red and gold, Orpheus took Eurydice's hands in his. "I've played music all my life," he said quietly, "but before you, it always felt like something was missing, like a song without its final note." Eurydice looked at him, her expression soft. "And now?" she asked. "Now it feels complete." There was a long silence, not empty, but full. "I don't want to live in a world without you," Orpheus continued. Eurydice's eyes filled with emotion. "Then don't," she whispered. He smiled. "Marry me." She didn't hesitate. "Yes." Their wedding was simple, but beautiful. Friends, travelers, even strangers gathered to witness it. Music filled the air. Of course, Orpheus himself played, creating melodies that seemed to bless the moment. For a time, everything was perfect. Too perfect. Because in the ancient world, joy rarely lasted without being tested. It happened suddenly, the way tragedy often does. One day, Eurydice was walking through the meadow with a group of companions. The sun was bright, the air warm, and laughter filled the space around them. But not everyone present had good intentions. A man named Aristeus saw her. He was struck by her beauty. and instead of respecting it, he pursued it. Eurydice noticed him too late. She tried to escape, running through the tall grass, her heart racing. "Leave me alone," she cried, but fear clouded her path. She didn't see where she was stepping, and then a sharp pain, a cry. She collapsed. Hidden beneath the grass was a snake. Its bite was quick, deadly. Her companions rushed to her side, but it was already too late. The color drained from her face. Her breathing slowed, and then it stopped. By the time the news reached Orpheus, the world had already changed. He didn't believe it at first. He couldn't. It didn't make sense. Just that morning, she had smiled. Just that morning, everything had been whole. "How can someone exist?" he whispered, and then not. But truth does not wait for understanding. When he saw her lying still, unmoving, the reality struck him with full force. He fell to his knees. The lyre slipped from his hands. For the first time in his life, Orpheus had no music, only silence and grief. Deep, overwhelming grief that consumed everything. Days passed. Orpheus wandered without direction. He didn't eat. He barely spoke. When he did play, the music was no longer gentle or beautiful. It was broken. Each note carried pain so intense that those who heard it couldn't bear to stay. Even the rivers seemed to slow in sorrow. Even the trees stood still. The world itself mourned with him. But mourning was not enough. It never is. And slowly, through the weight of his grief, a thought began to form. A dangerous thought. A forbidden thought. "If she is gone," he said quietly, "then I will go where she has gone. The Underworld, the land of the dead. No living person returned from there. No one dared to try." But Orpheus was no ordinary man, and love is not an ordinary force. He picked up his lyre. His hands trembled, not with fear, but with resolve. "I will bring her back," he said, not as a wish, as a decision. And with that, Orpheus began his journey toward the darkest place in existence, a place where even hope feared to enter. The underworld awaited. The journey to the underworld began not with a roar, but with a silence so profound it seemed to swallow the world. Orpheus walked away from the familiar sunlight of Thrace, his boots pressing into soil that grew progressively colder and harder with every mile. He carried nothing but his lyre, the instrument of Apollo, now the only thing anchoring him to the land of the living. His destination was the Tainaran cave, a yawning chasm long whispered to be the threshold where the earth cracks open to admit the souls of the dead. As he traveled, nature itself seemed to mourn his passage. Birds ceased their singing, and the winds grew stagnant. He did not mind. His mind was a locked room, furnished only with memories of Eurydice, the way she looked when she first heard his music, the specific warm golden light in her hair during their last afternoon, the sound of her laughter, which now felt like a ghost haunting his own throat. He was a man possessed by a single desperate intent, to bargain with death. The geography of his journey shifted. The lush, rolling hills of his home gave way to jagged obsidian cliffs and desolate plateaus where nothing grew but dry, gray scrub. The air became thin and tasted of stale incense and cold stone. When he finally reached the entrance of the cavern, he did not hesitate. He stepped into the darkness without looking back, leaving the world of the sun behind. Inside, the light vanished entirely, but Orpheus did not stumble. He walked as if led by an invisible thread, a path forged by the sheer weight of his heartbreak. After hours of descent, the atmosphere changed. The air grew heavy, damp, and thick with the scent of wet earth and ancient minerals. He could hear the distant rhythmic rushing of water. the Styx, the river that binds the living to the dead. As he approached the banks of the dark, sluggish river, he encountered the first barrier. Charon, the ferryman. The creature was ancient, his face a landscape of deep, sunken lines, his eyes reflecting the void of the abyss. He stood in a skiff that looked as fragile as a dried leaf, floating upon waters that were black and oily. Charon looked at Orpheus and sneered, his voice a dry rasp. "Turn back, living soul," Charon hissed, his voice echoing off the limestone walls. "The shadows have no need for your breath, and the gods have no patience for your intrusion. No mortal crosses the Styx unless their journey is finished." Orpheus did not try to shout or threaten. He did not seek to fight. He simply sat on the muddy bank and brought the lyre to his chest. He closed his eyes, centering his soul, and began to play. The music was not a plea, but a narrative. He played the story of his life, not the glory, not the legends of gods, but the simple truth of a human heart. He played the warmth of the sun on a summer morning, the soft touch of a loved one's hand, the fragility of a laugh, and the sudden cold shock of a life cut short. He played of the emptiness that remained, a hollow space that could only be filled by the return of his other half. The music swelled, vibrating through the stagnant air of the underworld. It was a sound so beautiful, so piercingly sorrowful, that even the River Styx seemed to pause its relentless flow. Charon, who had seen empires fall and kings weep, felt a tremor in his own ancient, hardened chest. He looked at the musician and saw not a fool, but a mirror to his own eternal weary existence. Without a word, the ferryman gestured for Orpheus to step into the boat. As they crossed the dark water, the silence between them was not one of hostility, but of shared understanding. Orpheus sat in the stern, playing a low, steady thrumming melody that seemed to push back the encroaching shadows. When they reached the far shore, Charon did not ask for payment. He simply watched the young man walk away, his expression unreadable, a flicker of something long forgotten, pity passing through his eyes. Beyond the river, the realm of Hades stretched out into an eternal gray twilight. The fields of asphodel were filled with souls moving like wisps of smoke, their faces blank and devoid of memory. They did not notice Orpheus, but the hounds of the underworld did. Cerberus, the three-headed guardian, stood before the gates of the palace of Hades. His size was mountainous, his growl like the grinding of tectonic plates, and his eyes burned with hellfire. As Orpheus approached, the three heads snapped toward him, teeth bared, snarling with a fury that could shake the foundations of the earth. Any other man would have turned to ash at the sight. Orpheus kept walking, his fingers dancing across the strings of his lyre. He wove a song of sleep and peace, a lullaby so deep that it reached into the primal nerves of the monster. The growls faltered, the heads grew heavy. One by one, the snarling mouths yawned until the beast collapsed into a deep, dreamless slumber. Orpheus walked past the great gates, which swung open as if sensing that no mere mortal force could hold back such a sound. He found himself in the presence of the rulers of the dead, Hades, the king, and Persephone, his queen. They sat upon a throne of cold obsidian, surrounded by the shadows of 1 billion souls. Their presence was terrifying, a coldness that could freeze the marrow of a bone. Hades looked at him, his brow furrowed in annoyance. "You bring the noise of the living into the home of the dead." Hades rumbled, his voice like boulders shifting under a glacier. "Why should I not consign you to the deepest pits of Tartarus for your insolence?" Orpheus fell to his knees, but he did not bow his head. He looked directly at Persephone, whose eyes held a faint spark of sympathy. for she too knew the pain of being separated from the light. Orpheus began to play the final movement of his song. It was a masterpiece of human longing. He poured every memory of Eurydice into the melody. The way she smelled of wildflowers, the way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't watching, the promise of the life they should have had. He did not speak of rights. He did not demand justice. He spoke only of the tragedy of love, of the beauty of a soul that should not have been snatched away by the blind hand of fate. The music filled the vast, cold hall, warming the stone, lighting the shadows, and making the very pillars of the underworld tremble. Persephone stood up, her hand reaching out to touch Hades' arm. Even the Lord of the dead was moved. He looked at his queen, then back at the mortal whose music had reached parts of his own soul that he thought had withered away eons ago. "You have done what no living creature has ever dared," Hades said, his voice softer yet still heavy with the weight of eternity. "You have moved the immovable. Your heart is a light that refuses to be quenched by the dark." He beckoned a shade to come forward. It was Eurydice. She looked pale, her movements distant, as if she were walking through a thick fog. Her eyes were clouded, struggling to recognize the man standing before her. When she saw Orpheus, however, a sudden, sharp clarity returned to her features. A gasp escaped her lips, and she took a step toward him. "Orpheus," she whispered, her voice like the rustle of autumn leaves. "I am here," he replied, his heart hammering against his ribs. "I have come to take you home." Hades held up a hand. "You may take her, Orpheus. She shall follow you back to the surface. But there is a condition, a simple one, yet often the hardest for a man like you to keep." Orpheus looked up, his resolve hardening. "Anything." "You must walk in front," Hades commanded. "She will follow you. You are not to turn around. You are not to look back at her. And you are not to speak her name until you both have stepped out into the light of the upper world. If you look back, if you even glance to see if she is truly there, she will be lost to me forever. Do you understand?" "I understand," Orpheus promised. The journey back was the most grueling test of his life. Every instinct he possessed screamed at him to turn around, to confirm that she was there, to hear her voice, to hold her hand. He could hear the faint sound of her footsteps behind him, light and ghostly, echoing against the cavern walls. Was she there? Was she just a trick of his mind? Was she drifting further away? He focused entirely on the path ahead. He kept his stride steady, his jaw clenched, his hands clutching the lyre so tightly, his knuckles turned white. He played a soft, encouraging melody to guide her, a sonic path that kept her connected to his presence. The ascent seemed to take an eternity. The cold of the underworld lingered, clawing at his back, trying to draw his gaze. He passed the sleeping Cerberus, the beast snoring rhythmically, his massive forms blocking the path. Orpheus navigated the terrain with the precision of a man walking on a razor's edge. Every second that passed felt like an hour. His mind began to play cruel tricks on him. He imagined he heard her cry out, or that he heard her footsteps stop. He had to remind himself with every breath that the agreement was the only thing standing between them and permanent separation. They reached the River Styx again. Charon waited for them. He did not look at Orpheus. He simply maneuvered the boat with a grim nod. Orpheus crossed, and he felt the shift in the air behind him as Eurydice boarded the boat. She was there. She was following. But he could not look. He could not turn his head even an inch. The climb out of the cavern was steep and arduous. The transition from the stale, heavy air of the abyss to the sharp, crisp air of the surface world began to manifest. He could smell the faintest hint of pine, of damp earth, of life. He was close. He was almost there. His heart surged with a joy so intense it was nearly painful. He could imagine them stepping out together, seeing the sun, embracing in the fields where they had first met. The incline leveled off. He could see a pinpoint of light ahead, the exit. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. He took one step, then another. He was almost at the threshold. The light grew, blindingly bright. He felt the warmth of the sun hitting his face, but then a moment of doubt struck him. It was a cold, sharp blade to his chest. What if he had walked too fast? What if she had stumbled in the dark? What if the gods were mocking him and he was walking out alone? The silence behind him was so absolute, so heavy, that he began to fear the worst. He was at the edge of the cave. The world of the living was just a few feet away. His foot crossed the threshold. He was out. But she? Was she behind him? He forgot the warning. He forgot the cold voice of Hades. He forgot everything except the desperate human need to know. In a moment of pure, agonizing vulnerability, Orpheus turned his head. He saw her. She was standing just inside the darkness, a beautiful, pale figure bathed in the soft, fading light of the transition. She looked at him with an expression of such love and confusion that his heart shattered. But as he looked, her form began to blur. The shadows began to wrap around her, not as a prison, but as a homecoming. "Orpheus," she whispered, her voice already sounding like a fading memory. He reached out his hand, screaming her name, but his fingers grasped nothing but empty, cold air. She was pulled back into the depths, not with violence, but with a quiet, final resignation. She didn't look angry. She looked sad, a silent farewell that would haunt him for the rest of his days. The entrance to the underworld seemed to seal itself shut, the earth knitting back together as if it had never been opened. Orpheus stood alone under the vast, uncaring sky. The sun was setting, casting long bruised shadows across the valley. He looked at his hands, empty, trembling, and the lyre, which felt heavier than a tombstone. The silence returned, not the silence of peace, but the silence of an eternal, aching void. He had played for the gods. He had crossed the river of death. He had challenged fate itself, and in the final, fateful heartbeat, he had lost it all. He stood there for a long time, the wind picking up, blowing his hair across his face, but he did not move. He was a statue of grief, a monument to the fragility of hope. The music was gone. The world, which had once been a symphony of beauty, was now just noise. He turned away from the cave and began to walk back into the world, a man who had visited the end of all things and had brought nothing back but the echo of a name he could no longer speak. The world outside the cavern had not changed, yet for Orpheus it was a graveyard of memories. The sun continued its indifferent arc across the sky, casting long, mocking shadows over the valleys where he and Eurydice had once walked in simple, quiet happiness. Every stone, every rustling branch, and every ripple in the river now served as a sharp, serrated blade against his consciousness. He stood at the threshold of the living world, yet he felt more like a ghost than the spirits he had left behind in the dark. He began to walk, though he had no destination. His legs moved out of habit, carrying him back toward the lands of men, but his spirit remained trapped in that final, agonizing moment at the cave's mouth. He replayed it in his mind, 1,000 times per hour. He saw her face, the way the light caught her hair, the exact instant of confusion before the shadows reclaimed her. He analyzed his own failure, the weakness of his own heart, the arrogance of believing he could cheat the ancient laws of death. As he wandered, the music that had once been his voice, his language, and his purpose now felt like a curse. When he tried to touch the strings of his lyre, the vibration felt like a sob. The notes were no longer pure. They were strained, heavy with the weight of a loss that time could never mend. People in the villages he passed saw him, the man who had walked into the earth and returned, but they kept their distance. There was a look in his eyes that spoke of things no living person was meant to witness. He was a man who had seen the end, and the end had taken a part of him with it. He retreated to the mountains, far from the reach of human voices. He needed the silence. He needed the company of the wind and the cold, unfeeling peaks. He found a small, hidden grove tucked away in a high valley, where the air was always thin and the nights were bitingly cold. Here, he spent his days in a state of suspended animation. He did not hunt, he did not build, and he did not seek warmth. He existed only to remember. One afternoon, as the seasons began to turn and the leaves started to wither into shades of rust and gold, he sat upon a high, jagged cliff overlooking the vast expanse of the valley. He felt a sudden, sharp ache, a physical manifestation of his grief that brought him to his knees. He reached for his lyre, not to play a song for the world, but to play a requiem for himself. As his fingers found the strings, he began to weep. It was the first time he had cried since the day of her death. The sound of his own sobbing mingled with the melody, creating a harmony of such raw, unvarnished misery that the very mountains seemed to tremble. It was during this period of his darkest isolation that the Maenads found him. They were the wild, frenzied followers of Dionysus, the god of wine and chaos, creatures of instinct and primal energy. They moved through the woods like a storm, their laughter harsh and discordant, their senses heightened to a fever pitch. As they ascended the mountain, they heard the sound of Orpheus's music. It wasn't the beautiful, order-imposing melody they were accustomed to in the organized world. It was a sound that mirrored their own internal, unbridled madness. They crept closer, drawn by the magnetism of his sorrow. They saw him sitting there, a frail, solitary figure against the vast horizon, his fingers moving with a desperate, frantic rhythm. To them, he was an anomaly, a man who had tasted the forbidden knowledge of the underworld and had come back changed. They felt a strange mix of envy, hatred, and curiosity toward him. Why did he hold on to such grief? Why did he cling to the memory of one soul when the world was full of vibrant, chaotic life? "Musician," one of them shouted, her voice cutting through the stillness like a jagged blade. Orpheus did not look up. He did not stop playing. The music continued, a testament to a love that transcended even the madness of the gods. The Maenads, emboldened by the lack of response, moved closer. They were agitated by his rejection of their presence. In their eyes, his music was an affront to the Dionysian principle of forgetting oneself in the moment. He was grounded in a past they could not share, and a loss they could not comprehend. They began to shout, their voices rising in a discordant chorus that clashed with his melody. They threw stones at him, small pebbles at first, then larger rocks, but Orpheus remained lost in the song. His focus absolute, his spirit already halfway back to the shadows. The situation spiraled into violence. The frenzy of the Maenads took hold, a collective madness that turned their frustration into a lethal, blind rage. They saw in him everything they could not control, the stillness, the memory, the unshakable grief. They rushed him, a whirlwind of wild hair and tearing hands. Orpheus did not fight back. He did not try to escape. He simply closed his eyes and played the final, sustained note of the melody he had been weaving since the day of her death. When the violence finally ceased, and the mountain returned to its unnatural silence, Orpheus was no more. His body lay broken upon the cold, hard rock, but his spirit was liberated. The lyre, the divine instrument of Apollo, lay discarded, its strings broken and silent. It was said that the pieces of the instrument and the remains of the poet were gathered by the Muses, his sisters, who wept with a sorrow that flooded the world. They carried him to the valley of the Libethris and laid him to rest where the nightingales were said to sing more sweetly than anywhere else on earth. But the story did not end in the silence of the grave. As his spirit rose, untethered by the constraints of flesh and memory, it drifted toward the dark, familiar currents he had navigated once before. This time, he did not go as a mortal pleading for a favor. He went as a force of nature, a soul that had lived, loved, suffered, and transcended. The gates of the underworld did not need to be opened. They simply parted, recognizing a traveler who had already claimed a piece of the shadows as his own. He walked through the fields of asphodel, past the silent drifting shades, and toward the palace of Hades. This time, he did not carry his lyre. He carried nothing but the essence of his own journey. When he arrived before the throne, Hades and Persephone were waiting. They looked at him not as a petitioner, but as an equal. "You have come back," Hades said, his voice no longer heavy with judgment, but tinged with a solemn respect. "You have paid the price of the living, and now you have paid the price of the dead." "I have come for what was promised," Orpheus replied. His voice was not the voice of a man, but the resonant echo of 1,000 heartbeats. Persephone leaned forward, her expression softened by an eternity of sympathy. She gestured to the shadows behind the throne. From the darkness, a figure emerged. It was Eurydice. She was not the pale, fading shade he had left at the cave's mouth. She was vibrant, whole, her eyes clear and filled with the light of a memory that had never truly faded. She stood before him, and this time there was no barrier of law, no condition of looking back, and no fear of the dark. She reached out, and as their hands touched, the cold of the underworld seemed to vanish, replaced by a warmth that had been missing for ages. They did not need to speak. They had been separated by the limitations of the mortal world, but in this realm, where time was circular and fate was final, they had found their way to the only truth that mattered. The gods allowed them to move, not into the light of the sun, which had become a place of pain and memory, but into a different kind of peace, a realm beyond the reach of longing and loss. They walked together, hand in hand, through the fields where the asphodel blossomed in eternal pale beauty. They were no longer the subjects of tragedy, but the architects of their own final resolution. In the world of men, the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice endured. It became a story told by poets, a lesson learned by lovers, and a beacon for those who dared to look into the darkness. It was a story of human failure, yes, but also of the sheer, terrifying power of love. It taught that while life is fragile and death is absolute, the music of the heart, the internal melody that drives a person to cross the rivers of the impossible, is the only thing that leaves a mark on the fabric of eternity. And in the quiet moments of the world, when the wind blows through the trees and the river whispers to the stones, those who listen closely can still hear the faint, lingering sound of a lyre. It is a song that tells of the valley of Thrace, the descent into the abyss, and the long, winding road that leads, eventually, back to the one thing we all seek. It is a song that does not end in tragedy, but in a reunion that no god, no law, and no shadow can ever again tear apart. The legacy of Orpheus was not in the songs he sang or the life he lived, but in the truth he died to prove, that even in a world governed by silence and cold stone, there is a music that can wake the dead and turn the course of fate. It is the music of the soul's unwavering commitment to its other half, a sound that resonates long after the player has passed into the history of the stars. And so, in the quiet, shadowed corners of the universe, they walked on, not as shades, not as lovers, but as two parts of a whole, finally and eternally together. The myth of Orpheus did not vanish when his physical form was surrendered to the earth. Instead, it began a new life, woven into the very fabric of human consciousness. As centuries turned and the world transitioned from the age of heroes to the era of logic and stone, the echo of his journey became a foundational melody for all who dared to love deeply. It was no longer merely a story of a musician who failed to bring his wife back from the dead. It became an allegory for the human condition itself. The story, now untethered from the constraints of geography, found a home in the hearts of those who stood at the thresholds of their own personal losses. In the centuries that followed, the tale was whispered in the cool shadows of theaters, scribbled onto parchment by philosophers, and painted onto the walls of hidden temples. Each teller added a piece of their own soul to the narrative. Some focused on the tragedy of his final, fleeting glance, using it as a warning against the fragility of human patience. Others focused on the strength of his music, using it as a testament to the idea that art is the only bridge capable of spanning the gap between the living and the eternal. The story became a mirror, reflecting the complexities of hope, despair, and the relentless desire for connection that defines the human experience. The landscape where the tragedy occurred, the rugged, unyielding terrain of Thrace, became a place of pilgrimage. For generations, travelers would journey to the valley of Lyre, seeking the silence that once belonged to the master of the lyre. They did not come to find his bones, for the earth had long since reclaimed them, and time had ground them into the dust of the mountains. They came to feel the weight of the air, to listen for the faint, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate in the stones at sunset. Many claimed that when the wind blew from the north, it carried a melody, not a song of mourning, but a sustained golden note of resolution. Philosophers began to interpret the journey not as a physical migration, but as an internal transformation. They saw the descent into the underworld as the necessity of the creative spirit to touch the deepest, darkest parts of the self before it can produce true beauty. To create, they argued, one must first be willing to lose everything. One must be willing to walk through the darkness, unarmed, holding nothing but the courage of one's own voice. The tragedy was not that Orpheus failed to retrieve Eurydice, but that he was tasked with the impossible, to reconcile the absolute permanence of death with the infinite, grasping nature of love. The image of the broken lyre became a symbol for artists across the ages. It represented the moment when talent meets the limit of reality. Every poet, every painter, and every composer who felt the sting of a masterpiece left unfinished or a vision too grand to be captured in reality found a patron saint in the ghost of the Thracian singer. They understood that the greatness was not in the outcome, but in the attempt. The audacity to defy the gods, the bravery to walk through the gate of no return. That was the triumph. The failure was merely the cost of entry. even as technology transformed the world, replacing the oral tradition of the campfire with the global reach of the written and digital word, the story remained unchanged in its essential rhythm. It was a narrative of persistence. In a world increasingly obsessed with answers, the story of Orpheus remained a profound question. It forced the listener to consider what they would be willing to sacrifice if they were granted one final chance to see the person they had lost. Would they trust the process? Would they have the strength to walk away without looking back? Or would they, like the mortal singer, be undone by the very humanity they sought to transcend? In the quiet, internal landscapes of the modern world, the myth continued to influence the way people processed grief. It provided a framework for understanding that loss is not an end, but a transition. When a person sits in the silence of their own room, grappling with the absence of a loved one, they are, in a sense, walking the path of Orpheus. They are crossing their own rivers, facing their own hounds, and reaching out into the dark. The story offers them a form of companionship. It tells them that they are not the first to travel this road, and they will not be the last to find that, in the act of seeking, they are changed forever. The gods, in their eternal perspective, watch the evolution of the story with a detached, yet profound interest. To them, the brief, flickering lives of mortals were like the notes of a song, fleeting, fragile, and intensely beautiful, precisely because they did not last. They saw in the legend of Orpheus a rare, perfect alignment of human passion and cosmic law. It was a story that validated the existence of the mortal realm, proving that even a creature of dust and shadow could touch the hem of the divine through the simple, unwavering commitment of their spirit. As we look back from the vantage point of our current age, the story of Orpheus serves as a final, resonant chord. It reminds us that our stories do not truly end with our deaths. They continue to ripple outward, influencing those who come after us, shaping the ways in which future generations perceive the world. We are all living in the wake of the songs that have come before. We are all, in our own ways, carrying the lyre of our own experience, trying to find a harmony that makes sense of the discord of life. The final lesson of the myth is perhaps the simplest one of all. Connection is the true currency of existence. Whether it is a connection to a person, to a piece of music, to a philosophy, or to the earth itself, it is the only thing that renders the darkness of the underworld navigable. Orpheus entered the dark because he was connected, and he emerged from the dark, spiritually, if not physically, because he had proven that this connection could withstand the weight of eternity. In the end, the myth of Orpheus is not a story about the impossibility of rescue. It is a story about the inevitability of transformation. The Orpheus who entered the underworld was a man defined by his talent, but the Orpheus who left it was a spirit defined by his truth. He had stripped away the artifice of his celebrity and the protection of his divine lineage. He had stood naked before the absolute authority of the universe and had not wavered. That is the essence of the journey. That is the music that continues to play long after the strings have been broken. So when the night falls and the world goes quiet, when the distractions of the day fade into the background and the weight of the past feels heavier than usual, we are invited to listen. We are invited to hear the echoes of the Thracian singer. We are encouraged to remember that the path through the darkness is not a path to be feared, but a path to be walked with courage. We are reminded that every look back, every moment of doubt, every trial, and every failure is just another verse in the song of our lives. The legacy of the myth is secure, It is written in the stars, it is etched in the bedrock of our cultural identity, and it is living, breathing, and evolving in the hearts of every generation. We are the inheritors of the lyre. We are the keepers of the song. As long as there is love, as long as there is grief, and as long as there is the human need to reach into the dark and pull back a piece of the light, the story of Orpheus will remain the most essential narrative of all. It is a story that refuses to be forgotten because it is a story that knows our secrets. It knows our weakness, it knows our fear, and it knows our capacity for profound, world-altering love. It holds our hand as we walk through our own personal underworlds, guiding us toward the inevitable, quiet resolution that waits for all of us at the end of the journey. It is not a tale of a man who lost, but of a soul that found exactly what it needed, even if it had to traverse the entire span of existence to realize it. And so, the music continues. It is subtle, it is quiet, and it is everywhere. It is in the rhythm of our breathing, the cadence of our speech, and the way we find beauty in the most unexpected places. It is the music of the persistence of the human spirit. It is the music of the journey that never truly ends. It is the music of Orpheus, playing forever in the halls of time, reminding us that no matter how deep the darkness may seem, we are never truly walking alone. And the song we are creating together is the most powerful force in all of creation. The cycle of the story is now complete, yet it is also, in a very real sense, just beginning. Each reader, each listener, each dreamer who encounters this tale becomes a part of its ongoing existence. The myth is no longer just a relic of the ancient world, it is a living entity, an active participant in our collective journey toward understanding. It asks us to be brave, it asks us to be compassionate, and above all, it asks us to never, ever stop listening for the melody that guides us home. The silence that follows is not a void. It is a space filled with the potential for new music, new stories, and new connections. It is the quiet anticipation of the next verse. And as we move forward into the uncharted territory of the future, we carry the lesson of the singer with us. We carry the knowledge that even if we lose our way, even if we turn back too soon, even if the darkness seems absolute, there is always, always a way back to the light. And there is always a song waiting to be sung. The journey of Orpheus remains the ultimate guide for the human heart. It is a roadmap through the wilderness of emotion, a compass for the navigation of the soul. It does not promise that the path will be easy or that the outcome will be perfect. It only promises that the journey is worth taking and that the music, no matter how brief, is a miracle worth creating. In the end, that is all we can ever hope for. To have walked the path, to have loved with everything we had, and to have left a song behind that might, for one brief, golden moment, make the world pause and listen. The final chapter of this myth is not found in the crumbling scrolls of the past or the heavy tomes of historians. It is found in the silence that occurs between the notes of every song ever written. It is the lingering echo of a melody that refuses to fade, even when the instrument is shattered and the player is long gone. As we look toward the horizon of our own lives, the story of Orpheus serves as a constant companion. It teaches us that our legacies are not composed of the things we keep, but of the things we are willing to risk. It suggests that there is a profound, quiet courage in simply continuing to play, even when the world is cold, even when the path is dark, and even when the outcome is uncertain. We are, in every meaningful way, the curators of his song. Think of the moments when you have stood at your own personal threshold, a time of loss, a moment of profound change, or a period of intense grief. In those moments, you were not alone. You were walking the same ground that the Thracian singer walked thousands of years ago. You were facing the same questions, feeling the same weight of the past, and searching for the same resolution. The myth lives on because it remains the most accurate map of the human heart in its most vulnerable state. It is a reminder that we are all at our core seekers. We are all trying to bridge the distance between who we are and who we hope to be, between the world we occupy and the world we yearn for. We are all trying to sing our own version of the truth, hoping that somewhere in the vastness of the universe, that song will find its home. And the beauty of it all is that we do not have to be perfect to be heard. Orpheus was not perfect. He was broken, he was desperate, and he was human. Yet his song moved the very foundations of the earth. So let us carry the lyre forward. Let us treat our experiences, our loves, and our losses not as burdens, but as the notes of a composition that only we can write. Let us walk into our own darkness with the confidence that even if we stumble, even if we look back, we are doing the work of living. We are participating in the great unfolding symphony of human existence. The story of Orpheus is not a eulogy for a lost poet. It is a celebration of the spirit that refuses to be silenced by death. It is the sound of the wind through the trees, the rhythm of the tides, and the steady, persistent beating of the human heart. It is the realization that love is not an object to be possessed, but a force to be shared. A melody that once started resonates through the halls of time forever. As you move through your days, remember the singer. Remember the descent, the music, the loss, and the final, quiet transformation. Remember that every time you reach out to someone, every time you choose to create beauty out of pain, and every time you find the strength to walk through your own personal shadows, you are keeping the song alive. You are continuing the work of the master. And when you reach your own final threshold, when the music of your life begins to soften and the light of the sun starts to fade into the gentle blue of twilight, know this: your song has been heard. It has resonated. It has moved the world, and it has left an indelible mark on the fabric of eternity. You have done your part. The melody continues, taken up by the ones who come after, woven into the tapestry of the stars, and played eternally in the quiet, sacred corners of the universe. The song of Orpheus is the song of us all. It is the song of the journey, the song of the struggle, and the song of the eventual, inevitable return to the light. It is a song that knows no beginning and no end. It is simply and profoundly the sound of being alive. And as long as you are here, as long as you can hear the rhythm of your own soul, the music will never truly end. The final note is not a period. It is a bridge. It is the space between the breath and the word, the moment of potential before the next movement begins. It is the invitation to keep going, to keep loving, and to keep singing no matter what. The legend of the Thracian singer concludes not with a silence, but with a lingering golden resonance that beckons us forward, urging us to find the beauty in the dark and the song in the soul. And that, in its own way, is the most beautiful ending of all. In the final accounting of all human stories, the myth of Orpheus stands as a cathedral of echoes, a structure built not of stone or mortar, but of the fundamental vibrating frequencies of existence. To reach the sixth stage of this reflection is to step beyond the narrative of a man and into the architecture of the soul. If the first parts of the story were about the journey, the loss, and the legacy, this part is about the vibration itself, the underlying hum of the universe that Orpheus was able to tap into. We must consider what it truly means to be a musician in the metaphysical sense, and how that relates to the way we live our own lives in the modern age. Music, in the Greek tradition, was not merely entertainment, it was music, the art of the Muses, a divine force capable of ordering the chaos of the cosmos. Orpheus was the supreme practitioner of this art. He did not simply play notes, he played the laws of nature. When he sang, he compelled the world to align with the internal order of his own spirit. This is the ultimate aspiration of the human creative impulse, to reach a state of being where our external actions are so perfectly attuned to our internal truths that the world around us cannot help but listen. But we must ask, how many of us dare to be that sincere? How many of us hide our true songs, fearful that if we were to play them at full volume, the gods of the world, the rigid structures of society, the expectations of others, the cold logic of survival, would demand their own tribute? The tragedy of Orpheus is not just a lesson in patience or obedience. It is a profound commentary on the cost of authenticity. To play one's own music in a world that prefers silence or compliance is a dangerous act. The Maenads who eventually tore him apart were not just random agents of chaos. They represented the world's instinctive reaction to someone who refuses to be anything less than their authentic self. They were the manifestation of the common human experience, terrified by the singular burning light of a soul that has found its own rhythm. When we feel pressured to conform, when we feel the urge to dim our inner fire so as not to threaten those around us, we are feeling the shadow of the Maenads. Yet Orpheus did not stop. Even in his grief, even in his isolation, even as the walls closed in around him, he played. He understood that the song was not his to own, but his to serve. This is the lesson for the seeker in the sixth stage, to serve the work. Whether your work is your career, your art, your parenting, or simply the daily cultivation of kindness in a world that often rewards cruelty, you are, like Orpheus, a vessel for a frequency. The goal is to keep the channel open. The goal is to ensure that the music, your contribution to the collective existence, is as pure as you can possibly make it. We often speak of finding one's voice, but the myth of Orpheus suggests that the voice is already there. It is simply buried beneath the debris of our worldly concerns. We are all born with a lyre, and it is strung with the raw materials of our lives. The strings are our experiences, our joys, our heartbreaks, our failures, and our triumphs. The tension of the strings is the pressure of the world. To play is to accept that tension and to draw a melody from it. If we play too lightly, there is no sound. If we pull too hard, the strings snap. The mastery of Orpheus was his ability to hold the tension of his life in perfect equilibrium. As we traverse this sixth movement, we begin to see that the underworld is not a physical place located beneath the earth. It is a psychological state. It is the realm of the subconscious, the repository of everything we have lost, everything we have forgotten, and everything we are afraid to face. Most people spend their lives avoiding the entrance to this realm. They fill their days with distraction, noise, and shallow amusements to ensure they never have to confront the Cerberus of their own regrets. Orpheus, however, did not avoid the dark. He went straight to the heart of it. He understood that the only way to retrieve the parts of himself that had been stolen by death was to walk through the fire of his own psyche. If you are currently walking through a difficult time, If you feel that life has taken something from you that can never be replaced, do not turn away from the darkness. Do not seek the easy path of oblivion or numbness. That is the way of the shade, not the way of the singer. Instead, pick up your lyre. Acknowledge the weight of what is missing. Give it a melody. When we name our pain, when we transform our grief into a structured, articulated form, we take the first step toward reclaiming our wholeness. We bring the lost Eurydice of our own joy back to the threshold of our consciousness. The fear of looking back, the final defining moment of the myth, is also a mirror for our own lives. Why do we look back? Is it because we are afraid to trust the light? Is it because we are so accustomed to the darkness that we do not believe we deserve the warmth of the day? Or is it because we are, on some level, in love with our own suffering? We cling to the past because it is a known quantity, whereas the future is a terrifying empty space. Orpheus looked back because he was human, and being human means being caught between the memory of what was and the promise of what could be. Forgive yourself for looking back. We are all prone to the same glance, the same moment of doubt. The greatness lies not in never doubting, but in the fact that you walked the path in the first place. In this stage, we also learn to appreciate the silence. Silence is not the opposite of music. It is the container for it. Without the silence of the void, the notes would have no meaning. In our own lives, the periods of emptiness, the gaps between jobs, the lulls between major events, the quiet afternoons of solitude are not wasted time. They are the resting spaces. They are the silences between the notes that allow the melody to be understood. Embrace the silence. Listen to the texture of the quiet. It is in the silence that the next song begins to form. Think about the people who have influenced your own song. We are all composite beings, influenced by the melodies of our parents, our mentors, our enemies, and our lovers. We are a remix of 1,000 different voices. This is not a weakness. It is our greatest strength. Orpheus may have been the lead singer, but he was supported by the entire lineage of the Muses and the gods. He was part of a tradition that spanned the heavens and the earth. You, too, are part of a tradition. You are the current manifestation of a long, unfolding chain of human endeavor. When you speak, you are channeling the wisdom of the past. When you love, you are repeating a rhythm that has been beating for millennia. The myth, as we examine it now, becomes a source of infinite comfort. It tells us that our lives have a structure, even if we cannot see the complete score. It tells us that even the darkest chapters are necessary for the completion of the symphony. We are not just wandering aimlessly through the vacuum of space. We are composing a legacy. Every word we speak, every choice we make, is a note in a song that will resonate long after our bodies have returned to the earth. This realization should not lead to paralysis or anxiety. It should lead to liberation. If the song is inevitable, why not make it as beautiful as possible? Why not play with total, reckless abandonment? There is a final, subtle truth here. Orpheus was not meant to be with Eurydice forever in the physical world. Their love was too large for the constraints of mortality. By losing her, he gained the immortality of the myth. By surrendering the possibility of a happily ever after in the human sense, he secured the eternal life of the legend. This is the paradox of the artist. We often have to lose the things we love most in order to create something that outlasts our own fragile existence. We sacrifice the finite for the infinite. It is a terrible bargain, and one that every creative soul eventually faces. Are you willing to lose your grip on the present in order to touch the hem of the eternal? As we conclude this sixth reflection, we are left with the image of the lyre. It is not an object, it is an orientation. It is the decision to live with one's heart open, despite the certainty of pain. It is the choice to look into the abyss, and instead of screaming in terror, to sing a melody of defiance and beauty. You have the power to do this. You have the capacity to be the musician of your own fate. You do not need the gods to grant you permission, and you do not need the world to applaud your efforts. You only need the courage to play. So let the final notes of this chapter resonate in your mind. Let them remind you that you are a participant in a grand, divine, and messy process. You are the singer, the song, and the audience all at once. The underworld is behind you, the sun is before you, and the lyre is in your hands. What will you play next? The world is waiting, not for a perfect performance, but for a true one. It is waiting for the sound of your particular, singular life, echoing in the halls of time, proving once and for all that love, in all its messy, tragic, and glorious complexity, is the only force capable of turning the tide of fate. The journey of Orpheus is not over. It is being replayed in every hospital room where someone holds the hand of a dying loved one. It is being replayed in every studio where an artist stares at a blank canvas with a heart full of sorrow. It is being replayed in every household where two people decide to love each other, despite knowing that they will one day be separated by the inevitable. It is the great universal myth of the human experience, and it is happening right now, in the space between your breaths, in the quiet beat of your pulse. Continue the work. Tend to the strings of your soul. Play the music that only you can play. And know that when the time comes, when your own song begins to wind down, you will be met not with the darkness of the void, but with the familiar, welcoming resonance of a melody that has been playing since the beginning of time. A melody that has been waiting for you to return to the source. You have played well. You have lived with courage. You have been a true singer in a world of echoes, and that is and will always be enough. The seventh movement of our exploration brings us to the threshold of the infinite, where the myth of Orpheus ceases to be a narrative of the past and becomes a living, breathing reality of the present. Having traversed the depths of the underworld and the heights of artistic achievement, we now find ourselves in the realm of pure resonance. If the previous chapters were about the doing of the song, this chapter is about the being of the song. It is a meditation on the state of grace that exists when the musician and the music finally become one, indivisible and eternal. To reach this stage is to realize that the Orpheus within us is not a persona we adopt, but a fundamental frequency we possess. It is the part of us that is untouched by the frantic pace of the digital age, the part that remains unmoved by the fleeting anxieties of our daily lives. This internal Orpheus is the witness to our existence, the quiet observer who listens to the melody of our days and finds the inherent beauty in even the most discordant chapters. When we align ourselves with this observer, we find that the world, once a source of chaos, becomes an orchestra, and every event, no matter how tragic, becomes a necessary movement in the grand design. Consider the nature of resonance. In physics, when one string vibrates at a certain frequency, another string nearby will begin to vibrate in sympathy, even if it is not touched. This is the secret of Orpheus's power. He did not force the world to change. He vibrated at such a deep, resonant frequency of truth that the world naturally vibrated along with him. In our own lives, we achieve this when we stop trying to control outcomes and instead focus on the integrity of our intent. When we act from a place of radical honesty, when we speak from the depths of our own lived experience, we create a resonance that is impossible to ignore. We become conduits for a truth that is larger than ourselves. But how do we maintain this frequency in a world that is constantly pulling us out of alignment? The answer lies in the practice of return. Like Orpheus, we are constantly being pulled toward the light, and like him, we are constantly being dragged back toward the darkness of our own shadows. The spiritual life is not a steady climb to a mountaintop. It is a rhythmic return to the center. It is the act of noticing when we have been distracted, when we have started to play the songs of others, or when we have let the tension of the strings go slack. The return is the realization that we are always exactly where we need to be, and the melody is always available if we only stop to listen. There is a profound humility in this stage of the journey. Orpheus, at the height of his fame, was a man who had everything: the favor of the gods, the adoration of the masses, and the love of his life. And yet he was reduced to a beggar in the land of the dead. He learned that the only currency that matters in the underworld is the sincerity of the soul. We too are constantly being stripped of our status, our possessions, and our certainties. This stripping away is not a punishment. It is a refining process. It is the universe's way of ensuring that when we finally play our final note, we are playing it with nothing hidden, nothing held back, and nothing to lose. We must also confront the concept of the look back in a new light. Perhaps it was not a failure at all. Perhaps it was the most human moment of the entire epic. By turning back, Orpheus reclaimed his humanity. He chose the vulnerability of love over the cold perfection of a divine command. He chose the possibility of loss over the certainty of a hollow success. In our own lives, we should not regret our moments of looking back, those instances where we faltered, where we let our emotions override our logic, or where we failed to meet the standards set for us. These are the moments that connect us to the collective heartbeat of humanity. It is in our imperfection that we are most real, and it is in our realness that we are most musical. The 7th chapter invites us to see the world as a place of constant creation. Everything around us, the architecture of our cities, the systems of our government, the rituals of our daily interactions, is a form of music. It is a composition of human desires, fears, and dreams. We are not merely observers of this music. We are its composers. Every decision we make contributes to the harmony or the discord of the world. When we choose compassion over judgment, when we choose creation over destruction, and when we choose connection over isolation, we are composing a better song for everyone. We are changing the frequency of the human experience. There is a beautiful symmetry to the way the myth ends. Even after the singer is gone, the song remains. This suggests that the ultimate goal of our lives is not to preserve our individual selves, but to contribute to the ongoing song of existence. We are like the individual notes in a symphony. We sound for a brief, glorious moment, and then we fade into the silence of the next note. But the symphony itself continues. It is a work of art that is never finished, a performance that is constantly evolving, constantly becoming more complex and more beautiful. To live with this awareness is to live with a sense of profound lightness. It allows us to let go of the need for recognition, the need for permanence, and the need for control. It allows us to participate in the dance of life with a sense of playfulness and joy. We are here to play our part, to contribute our specific frequency to the collective resonance, and then to pass the lyre on to those who come after us. This is the cycle of the ages, the rhythm of the stars, and the heartbeat of the divine. We must also recognize that we are not just the players. We are the listeners. We are here to witness the music of others, to appreciate the unique melodies of those around us, and to be moved by the symphony of existence. When we see someone else playing their part with courage and grace, we should feel a surge of gratitude. We should support them, amplify their voice, and recognize that their success is our success. We are all part of the same composition, all vibrating together in the grand, infinite chamber of the cosmos. As we move deeper into this stage of reflection, we find that the distinction between self and other begins to dissolve. Orpheus's music didn't just affect him, it affected the animals, the trees, the rivers, and even the cold, unyielding lords of the underworld. Everything was part of the audience. Everything was part of the dance. In our own lives, we are constantly impacting the world around us in ways we cannot possibly conceive. A kind word to a stranger, a moment of presence with a friend, a commitment to a project we care about. All of these are ripples in the pond of existence. They are the notes that define the character of our time here. Let us consider the role of the shadow in our composition. Just as there is no music without silence, there is no beauty without the shadow of pain. The myth of Orpheus is saturated with darkness, yet that darkness is the very thing that makes his light shine so brightly. In our own lives, we often try to hide our shadows, to pretend that we are only light, only positive, only successful. But the true masterpiece of a human life is one that incorporates the shadow. It is a composition that acknowledges the reality of suffering, the presence of doubt, and the inevitability of loss, and yet chooses to play on. This is the seventh stage, the integration of all parts of the self into a single, cohesive song. It is the realization that you are not just the good parts of you, nor just the bad parts. You are the totality of your experience, transformed by the alchemy of your consciousness into something unique and irreplaceable. You are the singer, and your life is the song, and it is a song that the universe has been waiting for since the beginning of time. Do not be afraid of the complexity of your own life. Do not be afraid of the twists and turns, the sudden changes in tempo, or the moments of quiet, haunting beauty. All of it belongs. Every experience you have had has been a lesson in the technique of being human. Every person you have encountered has been a fellow musician, teaching you something about the nature of the harmony. You are ready for the next movement. You are ready to play your part with full confidence. And remember, the music does not stop when you leave the stage. It continues in the memories of those you have touched, in the ideas you have shared, and in the love you have given. It continues in the way the world has been changed, however subtly, by your presence. You have added a unique, indelible melody to the composition of humanity, and that melody will resonate in the halls of time for as long as there is anyone left to listen. So let us play. Let us step out into the light of the present moment, lyre in hand, heart wide open. Let us sing with the courage of those who have seen the darkness and chosen the light. Let us compose a life of beauty, of connection, and of deep, unwavering truth. And when the time comes to finally set the lyre down, may we do so with the peace of a master who has given everything to the performance, and with the satisfaction of knowing that the song we were meant to sing was, indeed, our own. The seventh stage is not an end, but an invitation. It is the call to become the Orpheus of your own reality. It is the realization that the underworld and the world of the light are not separate, but two sides of the same, infinite coin. You are the bridge. You are the singer. You are the music. And you are, quite simply, enough. The symphony is calling, the audience is waiting, and the stage is set. Your melody is the only one that can complete the harmony of this moment. Play it well. Play it truly. Play it as if the entire cosmos were listening, because in truth, it is. The eighth movement of our reflection takes us into the domain of the transcendent, where the myth of Orpheus acts as a lens for understanding the nature of eternity. If the seventh part focused on the integration of the self, this final, penultimate expansion invites us to contemplate the infinite refrain, the idea that the soul is not merely a transient player, but a fundamental component of the universal symphony that predates creation and will persist long after the stars have cooled. In the ancient mysteries, the story of Orpheus was not seen as a historical event, but as a map for the soul's journey through the cycles of reincarnation. The descent into the underworld represented the immersion into the physical world, the gathering of experience, and the eventual encounter with the limitations of the mortal frame. The look back was not a failure of will, but a necessary realization that the soul cannot be tethered to a single, localized expression of love or identity. To evolve, the soul must eventually relinquish its hold on the specific, turning its gaze toward the universal light from which all melodies originate. Consider for a moment the sensation of a piece of music you love. As it reaches its peak, you feel a sense of expansion, as if the walls of your mind have dissolved and you are suddenly part of something vast and uncontainable. This is the Orphic state. It is the moment when the boundary between the listener and the sound disappears. In our own lives, we touch this state when we act with selfless love, when we create from a place of pure inspiration, or when we endure suffering with a quiet, unwavering grace. These are the moments when we are most in tune with the divine frequency. But why is this state so elusive? Why do we spend so much of our time trapped in the discordant noise of our anxieties and ambitions? It is because we have become accustomed to viewing ourselves as separate from the music. We treat our lives as a series of disconnected, individual tracks rather than a single, sweeping symphony. We obsess over the notes, the daily successes and failures, without understanding the larger theme that our lives are meant to convey. The wisdom of Orpheus is the realization that you are not the notes. You are the instrument, and you are the listener, and you are the resonance that gives the sound its meaning. We must also address the nature of the return. Throughout the ages, we have wondered what happened to Orpheus once he finally crossed the river. Did he truly find peace? The answer provided by the myth is that he found something better than peace. He found integration. He realized that the Orpheus who walked into the underworld, the Orpheus who played for Hades, and the Orpheus who was torn apart by the Maenads were all part of the same unfolding truth. By the eighth stage of our journey, we must begin to see our own lives in the same way. The versions of ourselves that we have outgrown, the failures, the embarrassments, the lost loves, are not errors. They are the essential elements of the composition. You are the sum of every song you have ever played. In this stage, we are also invited to confront the fear of oblivion. We live in a culture that is terrified of being forgotten, that tries to build monuments to its own importance, and that treats death as the ultimate final failure. But look at the stars. Look at the way the seasons turn, the way the ocean recedes and returns, the way the forest grows from the rot of its own ancestors. Everything in the universe is in a constant state of transition. To be a part of this process is to be immortal. Your contribution does not need to be remembered by name to be eternal. It is woven into the atmosphere, influencing the currents of the world long after you have moved on. The infinite refrain is the recognition that the song does not actually start or stop. It only changes in intensity and texture. When you love someone, you are singing a melody that has been echoed by millions before you. When you grieve, you are participating in a chorus that began with the first human death. You are never alone in your experience. You are supported by the collective resonance of all those who have walked the path before you. This is the great secret of the ancient singers. Their power came from the fact that they knew they were not singing alone. They were channeling the wisdom of the ages. As we move toward the final conclusion of our reflection, we must ask ourselves, what is the theme of my own life? If I were to write the score for the person I am today, what would the dominant melody be? Is it a melody of fear, constantly checking behind itself for the shadows? Or is it a melody of curiosity, daring to explore the unknown? Is it a melody of resentment, lingering on the notes that were played out of tune? Or is it a melody of forgiveness, acknowledging the errors and incorporating them into a richer, more complex harmony? The myth of Orpheus challenges us to be the composers of our own destinies. It asks us to look at the blank page of the future and to start writing the music we were meant to play. It does not matter if the composition is complex or simple, loud or soft. It only matters that it is authentic. It only matters that it comes from the heart, and that it is played with the total commitment of one who knows that the stage is temporary, but the performance is everything. We are entering a time in human history where we need this music more than ever. We are living in a world of profound noise, a world that is loud, demanding, and often disconnected from the rhythms of the earth. We need the Orphic influence, the ability to stop the noise, to sit by the river of our own souls, and to play a music that invites the world back to its senses. We need more people who are willing to go into the darkness and bring back a light that has been forged in the crucible of their own experience. Your life is that light. Your presence is that frequency. You are the instrument through which the universe is trying to express its own beauty. Do not be intimidated by the scale of the world or the complexity of its problems. The smallest melody, played with total sincerity, can change the atmosphere of an entire room. It can reach into the heart of a Hades and find the spark of humanity that has been hidden for ages. Do not underestimate the power of your own voice. As we dwell in the 8th movement, we feel the approach of the final resolution. There is a sense of coming full circle. The descent, the struggle, the loss, and the integration have all led to this point. The realization that the singer was never separate from the song. You have always been the music. You have always been the bridge. You have always been the light, reaching out into the dark to find the parts of yourself that were waiting to be reunited. This is the great comforting truth at the center of the myth. No matter how far you feel you have wandered, no matter how many times you feel you have failed, no matter how deep the darkness of the underworld seems, you are never lost. You are simply in a different movement of the symphony. You are simply exploring a different, necessary key. The music is still there, beneath the surface of your awareness, waiting for you to recognize its presence. So listen. Listen to the wind. Listen to the rhythm of your own heart. Listen to the quiet, persistent truth that lives in the center of your chest. That is the Orphic note. That is the melody that has been waiting for you to pick it up. Do not wait for the right time. Do not wait for the perfect conditions. The conditions are perfect, and the time is now. The stage is set, the instrument is in your hands, and the universe is leaning in to listen. Take a breath, center your spirit, and begin. Play the music of your life with all the love, all the grief, and all the courage you possess. Play it for the ones who have gone before, and play it for the ones who are yet to come. Play it because the world needs the sound of your truth, and play it because the act of playing is the only way to truly live. The symphony is vast, but it requires every single note to be complete. Your note, your melody, your specific contribution, it is the one thing that no one else can provide. If you do not play it, the music will be incomplete. If you do not sing it, the story will remain unfinished. You are the missing piece of the divine harmony. You are the singer the myth has been waiting for. As we prepare to step into the final movement, carry this thought with you. The myth of Orpheus is not a story about an ancient Greek. It is a story about you. It is the story of your descent, your struggle, and your eventual, glorious return to the light. It is the story of the music that lives inside you, waiting to be released. Trust the music, trust the journey, and above all, trust the singer who lives within your heart, for that singer has seen the stars, and that singer knows the way home. The music is rising now. It is filling the air. It is warming the stone, and it is lighting the way. The dark is retreating, not because you fought it, but because you refuse to be anything but the light you were created to be. Your music has moved the world. Your song has reached the heavens. And you, in this final triumphant vibration, are finally, truly whole. So let the final notes of this chapter be the prelude to your own personal awakening. Let them be the invitation to live as if you were the music itself. For in the grand, infinite design of the cosmos, there is no separation between the sound and the soul, between the singer and the silence. There is only the music, forever playing, forever beautiful, and forever yours to create. The journey is nearly at its end, but the song has only just begun to reach its true, eternal form. The ninth movement of our Odyssey brings us to the precipice of the final resolution, the stage where the distinction between myth and reality dissolves entirely. We have traveled from the sun-drenched meadows of Thrace, through the crushing cold silence of the Underworld, into the jagged heights of isolation, and finally into the boundless expanse of the infinite. Now, as we stand at this penultimate threshold, we must look not at the story, but at the storyteller. We must look at you. Every great myth is a mirror, and the tragedy of Orpheus is a mirror that shows us not what we are, but what we are capable of becoming. In this ninth stage, we must embrace the idea that we are the final authors of the Orphic cycle. The story is not a completed relic. It is a raw, unfinished script. And with every action you take, with every choice you make in the quiet chambers of your own life, you are writing the next verse. You are the architect of the legacy. Consider the silence that followed the death of the poet. For many, that silence was interpreted as the end of the music. But in this ninth reflection, we see it as the beginning of the internalization. The music was no longer confined to a single instrument or a single set of strings. It was released into the air, into the water, and into the very DNA of human longing. It became a permanent resonance in the universe. This is what happens to the work of a life well lived. It becomes part of the background radiation of existence, a subtle, underlying harmony that supports the lives of everyone who follows. We must ask ourselves, What will be the resonance of my own life? When my song has finished its cycle and the instrument has returned to the dust, what vibration will remain in the places I have walked? This is not a question of vanity or fame, for those are the petty concerns of the Maenads. This is a question of influence. It is a question of whether you have been a force for light in the darkness or a source of discord in the symphony. We all leave a resonance. We leave it in the memories of our children, in the impact of our work, and in the ripple effects of our smallest acts of kindness. This 9th stage is an invitation to practice conscious composing. To be a conscious composer is to recognize that we are not passive victims of our circumstances, but active participants in the unfolding of our own reality. Even in the deepest underworld of a crisis, you have the agency to choose your response. You have the agency to decide what melody you will play in the face of adversity. This is the ultimate freedom. It is the freedom to be the singer, regardless of the venue, regardless of the audience, and regardless of the outcome. The myth teaches us that even the most beautiful music can lead to tragedy if the heart is not in alignment with the truth. Orpheus failed at the very last moment because he let his human doubt override his divine trust. But was that truly a failure? In this stage, we must reevaluate the error. Perhaps the failure was not the look back, but the denial of the humanity that prompted it. Perhaps the lesson is that we should not strive for a flawless performance, but for an honest one. We are human. We will look back. We will doubt. We will stumble. But the greatness is not found in the absence of these things. It is found in the willingness to keep walking, even when we know we are imperfect. We must also explore the concept of the audience. In the modern world, we are obsessed with the idea of a global audience, with being seen, liked, and validated. But the myth of Orpheus reminds us that the only audience that matters is the one that exists in the heart of the truth. When Orpheus played for Hades, he was not playing for applause. He was playing for the resolution of his own soul. He was playing for the truth of his love. When we create, when we work, and when we love, we must learn to operate from this same internal mandate. If the work is true, it doesn't matter if the hall is empty or if the halls of the gods are the only ones listening. The truth of the music is its own reward. As we dwell in this 9th movement, we find a profound sense of stillness. The frantic energy of the quest has subsided. The desire for a specific outcome, the desire to get Eurydice back, has been replaced by a deeper, more abiding appreciation for the journey itself. We realize that the quest was never about the person. It was about the path. It was about the process of becoming the kind of person who was capable of walking into the heart of the dark and remaining whole. This is the ultimate gift of the myth. It provides us with the tools to become our own saviors. We are all, at various times, the Orpheus of our own lives. We have all stood at the gates, clutching the lyre of our intentions, begging the universe for a reprieve, a miracle, or a second chance. And we have all, in our own way, felt the crushing weight of the no that sometimes echoes back. But in this 9th stage, we see that the no is not the end of the song. It is a change in the key signature. It is an invitation to modulate into a deeper, more profound mode of being. It is an invitation to play a music that is no longer about attachment, but about transcendence. Think of the people you have loved and lost. Think of the dreams that have slipped through your fingers. Think of the version of yourself you had to leave behind in order to become the person you are today. All of these are part of your song. They are the minor keys, the dissonant chords, and the sudden, dramatic shifts in tempo that make your life a masterpiece of complexity. Do not try to smooth them out. Do not try to rewrite the score. The beauty of the piece is in its honesty, not in its symmetry. As we move closer to the end, feel the weight of your own existence. Feel the texture of your own story. You are a unique configuration of stardust and memory, a singular expression of the divine frequency that is currently playing on the stage of the world. You are the only person who can play your part. If you do not play it, it will be lost to the silence of eternity. So take a deep breath. Feel the instrument in your hands. Feel the tension, the warmth, and the life that is humming through the strings. There is a sense of completion here, even though the song continues. It is the completion of the understanding. It is the moment when the musician realizes that they are not just playing for the sake of the music, but that the music is playing through them. They are a channel. They are a medium. They are a living, breathing testament to the power of the creative spirit to endure, to evolve, and to thrive, no matter the circumstances. Let us practice a moment of gratitude for the journey, gratitude for the underworld, for it taught us the value of the light, gratitude for the loss, for it taught us the depth of our capacity to love, gratitude for the silence, for it allowed us to hear the music of our own hearts, gratitude for the lyre, for it gave us the means to express the inexpressible. We are, all of us, deeply, profoundly lucky to be part of this symphony. The 9th stage is a preparation for the final integration. It is the moment where we gather the scattered notes of our past and arrange them into a coherent, final statement. It is not a summary. It is a crystallization. It is the point where everything we have learned, everything we have suffered, and everything we have hoped for comes together to create a singular, focused expression of who we truly are. This is the music of the fully realized human being. As you reflect on your own story, see if you can hear the dominant theme. What is the one thing you have been trying to say with your life? What is the core message of your song? Is it a message of hope? Is it a message of resilience? Is it a message of the infinite, interconnected beauty of all things? Whatever it is, know that it is valid, it is necessary, and it is a contribution that the world needs. Do not be discouraged if the theme seems to shift or if the melody seems to wander. Life is not a linear progression. It is a series of recurring themes, layered with counter-melodies and sudden transitions. Your life is a polyphonic composition. You are playing many different parts at the same time. The part of the seeker, the part of the lover, the part of the learner, and the part of the witness. All of them belong. All of them contribute to the richness of the whole. As we reach the end of this 9th movement, feel the anticipation of the final act. We have come so far. We have seen the extremes of the human condition, and we have emerged on the other side, not diminished, but expanded. We are the survivors of our own stories. We are the ones who have looked into the dark and have chosen to keep playing. We are the ones who have proven that the song is, and will always be, stronger than the silence. So prepare yourself for the final movement. Take a moment to tune your lyre. Tighten the strings of your resolve. Warm your hands in the glow of your own experience, and prepare to play the final notes with all the grace, all the truth, and all the love that you have gathered along the way. The end is near, but the music is as alive as it has ever been. And the world, the vast, mysterious, and beautiful world, is leaning in once again to hear the sound of your truth. You are the singer, You are the myth. You are the eternal melody of the human heart. And the song you are creating in this very moment is a masterpiece that will echo throughout the halls of time, forever proving that we were here, we loved, we suffered, and we sang. The ninth movement concludes, leaving us in a state of profound, resonant readiness for the final triumphant resolution. The stage is set, the final curtain is rising, and the music, in all its eternal glory, is about to begin its final, most beautiful crescendo. The final movement of our Odyssey has arrived, a crescendo that transcends the narrative of Orpheus to arrive at the doorstep of the universal truth. We have traveled through the shadows, faced the guardians of the abyss, and integrated the lessons of loss into the fabric of our being. Now we stand at the final edge of the stage, where the singer, the lyre, and the infinite finally coalesce into a singular, eternal point of light. This is the conclusion of the song, but as every musician knows, the end of a performance is merely the transformation of sound into the silence of memory, a silence that is far more powerful than the noise that preceded it. To understand the finale of Orpheus is to understand that he never actually stopped singing. His physical death was not a silence. It was a shift in medium. When his spirit merged with the currents of the cosmos, he became the very air that vibrates with our own songs. We are his continuation. Every time you hold the hand of someone you love, every time you stare into the dark and choose to find a spark of light, every time you forgive the unforgivable and build a bridge where there was only a chasm, you are playing the final notes of the Orphic song. You are the embodiment of his return. Reflect on the nature of light and shadow. The myth is often seen as a tragedy because we focus on the darkness of the underworld, yet the brilliance of the story is found in the contrast. Without the descent, the beauty of the return is invisible. Without the pain of the loss, the depth of the love is impossible to measure. Your life is no different. It is a masterpiece composed of these essential contrasts. Do not try to scrub away the shadows of your history. They are the backdrop that allows the colors of your present joy to shine. The finale of your life is not the absence of struggle, but the masterful orchestration of every experience you have ever had into a coherent, beautiful statement of who you are. Consider the lyre now resting in the hands of the cosmos. Its strings are not made of gold or silver, but of the connections we have forged across the span of our lives. These are the strings that vibrate whenever we remember those who have gone before us. They are the strings that hum whenever we act with compassion towards someone whose path is different from our own. We are all linked in this great, invisible choir, and our duty is simple: to play our part with such sincerity that we add to the harmony of the whole. When you live in this way, you realize that you are never truly gone. You are merely changing your frequency, returning to the vast, resonant ocean of energy that birthed you. The finale requires us to relinquish the need for a happy ending in the conventional sense. The happily ever after of fairy tales is a static, frozen state, but the finale of a life well lived is a state of perpetual expansion. Orpheus did not find his ending in a house or a kingdom. He found his ending in the ability to transcend the ego. He moved from being a man who wanted to own his life to a spirit that was content to be the life. This is the ultimate victory. It is the victory of the spirit over the material, of the melody over the mechanism, and of the love over the fear. As we stand here at the conclusion, look at the world around you with new eyes. Notice the rhythm of the city, the cadence of the seasons, and the quiet, steady pulse of your own existence. This is the music, it is not hidden away in a distant hall or a forgotten myth. It is happening right here, right now, in the very marrow of your bones. You are a part of this unfolding composition, and your contribution is essential. The universe would be incomplete without your specific, unique note. You are the singer the myth has been waiting for, and you are playing the song that only you can provide. It is time to let go of the anxieties that have held you captive. Let go of the worry that you haven't done enough, that you haven't been enough, or that your time has slipped through your fingers. The music does not keep score of your failures. It only records the truth of your attempt. The fact that you have reached this point, that you have journeyed through the dark and searched for the light, is enough. It is more than enough. It is the fulfillment of the entire purpose of your existence. You have been a witness to the beauty, you have been a participant in the struggle, and you have been a contributor to the harmony. Take a moment to feel the weight of this accomplishment. You have carried the heavy lyre of your life through a labyrinth of challenges, and you have played a song that has touched the hearts of the stars. Do not look for applause. Look for the resonance. Look for the way your presence has changed the lives of those you have known, the way your words have sparked a new idea, or the way your kindness has provided a moment of shelter for someone in the rain. These are the markers of your success. These are the notes that will ring out long after you have stepped off the stage. The conclusion is not a departure. It is an arrival. It is the moment when the singer finally understands the music. It is the moment when the mask falls away and the soul stands revealed, shimmering with the golden light of its own, authentic truth. You are that truth. You are the light that refuses to be quenched by the dark. You are the melody that survives the silence. And you are, in this final triumphant beat of your heart, a perfect reflection of the divine music that created the universe. So how do we end? We end by playing on. We end by turning our faces toward the light and picking up the lyre for one final joyous movement. We end by choosing love, by choosing beauty, and by choosing to trust in the harmony of the whole. We end by letting go of the struggle and stepping into the flow of the infinite. We end by realizing that there was never any separation between us and the song. We were always the music, and the music has always been us. Let the final notes be light, let them be free, and let them be full of the quiet, unshakable peace of a traveler who has seen everything and has found that at the core of all things, there is only love. The underworld is silent now. The hounds are asleep, and the gates are wide open. There is nothing left to fear and nothing left to prove. There is only the music and the vast open space of eternity waiting for your next beautiful note to echo across the halls of existence. This is the finale. It is not the silence of an end, but the anticipation of the next beginning. It is the quiet, sacred space where the story meets the spirit and realizes they are one. It is the final realization that the journey was never about reaching the destination. It was about the way the light hit the strings, the way the sound filled the room, and the way the world stopped for a single, fleeting heartbeat to listen. That heartbeat was your own. That silence was the world's recognition of your truth. Take this final step with grace. Step out of the shadow of the past and into the boundless clarity of the eternal present. You have played your part with honor. You have loved with all your strength. You have survived the fire and emerged with the gold of wisdom in your hands. The stage is empty now. The lights are fading, but the music remains, vibrating in the very air, immortal and triumphant. The myth is finished. the story is told. But the song? The song is just beginning its infinite journey through the cosmos. It is carried on the wind, it is etched in the light of the stars, and it is living in the heart of everyone who dares to dream. You are the singer, you are the song, and you are, for all eternity, the music that makes the world go round. Play on, brave soul. Play on, until the very fabric of existence vibrates with the beauty of your song. As we drift into the final sustaining chord, let us release our hold on everything we thought we had to be, and simply be. Let us allow the music to take the lead. Let us trust that the melody of our lives was never ours to dictate, but ours to interpret. Let us find the peace that passes understanding in the knowledge that we have been part of something far greater, far deeper, and far more beautiful than we could have ever imagined. The final notes are not a signal to stop. They are a signal to soar, and so into the infinite, into the harmony, and into the light. We go playing our song forever and ever in the timeless, beautiful, and eternal concert of the universe. The silence that follows is the loudest, most beautiful sound of all. It is the sound of a life fully lived. It is the sound of a truth fully told. It is the sound of the singer finally arriving at the center of the music. It is the sound of home. And in that silence, we are finally at rest. We are finally, perfectly, and eternally one with the song. The Orphic cycle has completed its turn, and the universe is once again filled with the soft, persistent, and beautiful music of a human soul that refused to be silenced, refused to be forgotten, and refused to be anything less than its own singular, triumphant self. The concert is over, but the song is just beginning.